Well, hello, and welcome to the MilVet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world-class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the MilVet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and I have the pleasure today to be joined by Kevin Capozzoli, who will talk about his journey from the military over to Critical Materials Group. For those that may not be familiar with the MilVet provides an executive platform for veterans that are interested in getting into the private equity venture capital space, primarily as operators. If you want to learn more, check out TheMilVet.org. You can see open roles we have. You can check out our podcasts. You can check out upcoming events that we have. So make sure and take a look at TheMilVet.org, recently updated website, to get more information on what the MilVet is all about. But today we are here with Kevin. And Kevin, welcome to the program, man. Tell us what you're up to these days.
Hey, Beau. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm the co-founder CEO of a company called Critical Materials Group, based here in Texas. So been pretty busy for the last year since we launched it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we'll dig into more about what the Critical Materials Group is all about. But before we get to what you're doing now, I'd love to back it all up and kind of talk about how your journey started. I know we talked a little before that you started off at Florida State. I have a son at Florida State, so near and dear to my heart. But what was the impetus for your, how the Army or the military journey, begin for you?
Yeah, I think I was heavily influenced by my dad. He was a Vietnam vet, had been drafted, and at the time they were, second lieutenants weren't lasting very long. So as an infantry guy, he went straight from basic training into OCS there at Benning, and then went over to Vietnam. Interestingly enough, like aviation wasn't a branch then. So he was an infantry officer that went to flight school. So he did 2 tours of duty with a CAV unit as an infantry platoon leader and then as a pilot. And then landed in Fort Rucker, Alabama, post Vietnam. But his time in service really impacted him in a positive way. And as a kid growing up, for whatever reason, I was very, very drawn to it. One, it's a sense of service. Like I felt the need to contribute and be a part of making things better. But my dad and his veteran friends in that cohort, there was just something that they'd experienced and done together that made them better as humans and as men. And candidly, I think the only way you were going to know what that experience was to live it yourself. So for me, couldn't point exactly what it was, but I had some really positive influences early on and a really strong desire to serve. Some of that candidly came from living overseas in Saudi Arabia off and on for 16 years. So from kindergarten through 7th grade. And then when I went back to, in high school, my parents moved back to Saudi Arabia and I went to boarding school. But traveling in and out of the Middle East in the 80s, there was a lot of plane hijackings and other type of terrorist events, and let alone the infrastructure that was heavily guarded in Saudi Arabia at the time. And as a youngin', you're trying to figure out like, why are people doing that? So I think earlier than most, I had an idea of, hey, there are things in the world that need, that we need to protect against. And for whatever reason, I decided I wanted to be a part of doing that. So all that kind of came together to me wanting to serve.
Did you know what you wanted to do as far as like joining the military? Did you have an exact idea, like you wanted to be a pilot, or just kind of went in thinking, I'll figure it out when I get there? Kind of, how was that? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So given that you went to UVA and I went to Florida State, we're going to talk about SAT scores, but I was an infantry guy through and through. Like for me, I did okay on the SAT, but I think for me, there was something about kind of that general purpose leadership and the opportunity to be on the ground and get your hands dirty and have a real impact as an infantry officer that pushed me in that direction early. And so as I was finishing up high school and going into college, it was, for whatever reason, I wanted to go infantry. And that was was very fortunate to have the opportunity to do that for 25 years.
That's awesome. Hey, look, it is the backbone of the military, the Marine Corps or the Army. Infantry is what it's all about, right? Well, can you share? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of stories and influences you had in the military, but any couple examples of things that you were able to take from your military experience that you feel like are maybe the critical things or some essential things that that have proved help you be successful, in your post-military career.
Yeah, I think one of the things the service does exceptionally well is take folks at a very early age and give them real responsibility and decision making. Now it starts off more as a manager, and they bake into you like a really strong set of management tools. The military decision making process. Well, there's a lot of business terms for that. How do you rip apart like the competition? How do you understand yourself? How do you generate a solution? So I say there's the base level core like tackling of like, hey, what it means to have a good manager. And we all have had those experiences where we've had a bad manager, what it means to be a good leader and have to serve with and serve under folks that weren't so exceptional. And you learn from both. But for me, I think it starts early with just being put in a position where you could be responsible for something and your impact like is direct. Like you either made it happen, you contributed to a positive outcome, or you didn't, and you learn from it if you fell short. The other thing is failure. Like I think as you look at entrepreneurship and in real life, like you're not going to knock it out of the park every single time. You get plenty of opportunities to fail and fail early. And you do that within kind of a network, a framework that allows you to learn from those and get better and compound over time and surrounded by phenomenal humans. So I think when I think about what I took out of military service, it's the opportunity to get a real skill set in a very compressed period of time. Now I did it for 25 years, but that first 4 years of your time in service is going to be very, very fundamental. Crucible events in there that accelerate your ability to understand, lead, make decisions, manage risk, et cetera. So I think if I had one thing that I could point to, it's the opportunity to manage and lead and to do that in a learning environment with real outcomes. Like if you get it wrong, like the consequence is going to be pretty severe. And then just the opportunity to continue to get after it and learn and contribute in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I always say that the military, it gives you a master's degree in leadership, and that's what it is, right? That's not something you necessarily sign up for or you appreciate before you're in it, but you see all the different types of leadership styles. And to your point, I think you learn probably more from bad leaders than good leaders, right? A lot of times, like I'm never doing that, but the good leaders obviously leave a big mark on you as well. And I think you're so spot on about learning how to fail in a somewhat controlled environment. There's some things you can't fail, right? I get that's part of the military too, but you're going to not get everything right, and to learn to fail fast, learn from that, recover from that, have leaders that will mentor you and help you get through it. Like, especially when you're a young lieutenant, a lot of initiative, but maybe not the best judgment sometimes, right? So having that in those early formative years to have the opportunity to make some mistakes, but somebody to give you some rudder and say, hey, have you thought about it from this way or thought about it from that lens? And to really invest in you, as a junior officer, because they see the potential, hopefully, in you, even if you did do something, as a knucklehead when you're a little younger, right?
Oh, 100%. And I think I can remember distinctly the first time I saw somebody really command. The difference between leading and commanding, there's a difference, right? In managing. But the first time I saw somebody really, really command was early on, like my first 4 years in the Army. I was at the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and I worked for a guy named Captain Chris Donahue, who just retired after an exceptional career in Europe, and he commanded. And that really was like, hey, there's a problem-solving aspect to this. There's a vision. There's a looking around the corner. And I think the positive impact that he had on the company at that time, and then there was other exceptional commanders within that battalion, that was like, man, I wanted that. I wanted to be the one that had made that positive impact in other people's lives. But yeah, you get to see a little bit of everything and kind of find the style that best suits you. And you're the beneficiary, if you take it, of a whole bunch of people that are trying to help you get there from all sides.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all had those mentors. And I had on the Army side, I had the honor to serve with Scott Miller, who retired as a 4-star, and just one of the most incredible leaders of all time, and could just truly had the ability to like get to the crux of the point. Amazing, taking a million inputs and like figure out, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and do it quickly. That is command, man. He could work a room and just had a presence that you knew like you could take it all in, make a decision, and you just go. And you would, charge hell for that guy. So I get it. It is a unique skill that some of those folks have, no doubt, no doubt. Well, what? Obviously, you had a 25-year career, which is a great run. But as I do want to get to where you are now. What was kind of the calculus or what was your transition like out of the military? Everybody has a reason why they get out. I mean, I always say when you know, you know. There's a million reasons why, but what was your transition like from the Army?
Man, I had an incredible time, and I was very, very fortunate to get to serve with incredible folks all the way to the end. But I think what I knew is I had this other thing I wanted to do post the military. I wanted to found a company. I wanted to join some early stage. I wanted to build it, and I wanted to do it in an industry with a purpose that really resonated with me. And so I think I always had that in me. Like when I was at Florida State for a period of time, I was a business major with a kind of specialization in entrepreneurship. But for me, it was, and a lot of folks, you get those promotion decisions you have to make. Hey, do I accept this promotion? Hey, do I go to this next school? And then there's a service commitment behind it. And you have to have a real honest discussion with yourselves. Like, hey, if I take this job, if I accept the promotion, and if I go to the War College, for example, then I'm locked in. I'm taking time. Somebody else could take that slot if they have a desire to continue to serve beyond. And I had a very unique opportunity to serve at the 06 level and do a lot of things I would have done as a command slate brigade commander. And I had a chance to do that without going to the War College and going down that road. So for me, it wasn't running away from anything. It was like, hey, I had a phenomenal set of opportunities, got to do everything I wanted to do, and then some. Lasted probably about 21 years longer than I thought I would. So it wasn't some like, hey, I'm a lifer. I just kept finding great units to be a part of and opportunities that really moved me. But you get to that point where you're like, hey, what am I really going to do? And you start to hit your late 40s and 50s knocking and the 60s right around the corner. And you're like, all right, cool. With my remaining work life, what do I want to accomplish? And for me, having had a very fortunate pathway to do everything I wanted to do in the military and then some, the next natural step for me was move on to that business entrepreneurship kind of dream that I've had for a long, long time. And so that happened for me in 2019. My retirement didn't happen until 23. So I declined the War College, and I said, hey, I'm not in to do that. I think it's a phenomenal job, but my path's taking me in a different direction. And I started to look for other education opportunities. So for me, it was business school, which I think is very common with a lot of vets getting out is you hit business school and route. It's kind of a translation guide between everything that you did in the military and in this new set of incentives and outcomes that you got in the business world. And there's a pretty heavy overlap between the two. So for me, it was University of Texas, Austin. So in 2019, I was like, yep, that's it. I'm going to do grad school as a part of transition, and then I'm going to move off to the next chapter. And so I was able to make a call early, be very, very happy with it, look forward, left on my own terms. And I think that really, really helped me have a smooth transition. And it was a smooth transition for me. And I think maybe it was because I flipped that switch and I knew, without regret what I was going to be doing next. And I had the ability to call it on my own terms. And then I was able to execute on a plan. And I was very lucky to have a command that supported that. And so I did grad school and got out and, consulting and then, my first startup. But I'll tell you, transition is really, really difficult for a lot of teammates. And I don't discount that at all because you try to struggle and it's like, hey, what's my purpose in life? I spent the last 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years committed to something. And all of a sudden that structure's pulled away. You got a bunch of people that will tell you how thankful they are for your service, but that doesn't necessarily line up with immediate opportunities to contribute at a level that you've commensurate to your experience. Like there's usually people filling those executive roles and they've got decades of experience. While you're in uniform, they were doing it in business. And so you really have to have a willingness to kind of start over. If you're really going to get to build something or come in at an executive level, you got to start in at the ground floor. And there's other ways to get there, but I'll tell you that as folks transition, as I transitioned, I just wasn't really looking to get a job. I was looking to make a job. One, because that's how I was wired. And I think we could probably open up the narrative to like, hey, how do we help veterans make a job? Let's go get one. And maybe folks would, from a mental standpoint, would make that switch earlier and just let it rip and go for it.
I love that. I love that comment of, looking to make a job, not just get a job, because I think that's what most people are. I need to go get a job now. This chapter is over, and what am I going to do? And I like the vision that you had. And look, and again, I've talked to a lot of folks on this show, and the traits that you have to have with that entrepreneurship bent is you're betting on yourself, right? It's like, look, I don't know exactly what this business world thing is. I've been really successful in the military. My biological clock is telling me it's time to do that next thing. I think there's always a little bit of, and I use the word imposter syndrome, because your peers in industry that are now, 40s have been doing industry for 20 years, and you've been doing military, which is super important. You've learned a ton. You have a lot of other skills, but not necessarily exact translation one for one for the business side, right? So you're not necessarily, to your point, you have to be willing to take a little bit of a step back, because you haven't managed a P&L in the true sense of managing a P&L, right? You haven't had to make payroll for guys like Uncle Sam's paying you no matter if you're the best or the worst lieutenant, right? You're getting paid. So it's different. I mean, so there, some things translate, but I think the thing that I've seen as that overriding similarity is, and in that space that you're talking about, is I'm betting on myself, though, right? I don't know where I'm going, but I know that there's something more, and that I believe that I can do it. And you got you got the X's and O's, the blocking and tackling from getting an MBA, right? That's the book piece of it, which is important. I guess a foundational piece, but then it's how do you take that plus your military and take that true first step? I mean, did you know what you wanted to build or create? I mean, walk us through, like, did you have an idea when you were in business school of what you wanted to build and create, or is it something that came over time? And how did that's even a more scary journey or leap. It's like, okay, got the military thing, check, got the MBA. Now it's like, okay, now school's over. Now I got to really do something. And how that process come about for you?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing. You got a bunch of folks coming out, and I consider myself one of them, using myself kind of as the example here. You wanted to put all of that towards something, and you're trying to figure out what that something is. What is it you're going to build? What's worth building? What solves a real problem? And then even if it's a great problem and it's worth solving, does it make money?
Yeah.
Then and so there's, really got to be kind of, you got to be grounded and realistic that, hey, this is a great nonprofit and that's cool. And if this is where your heart's taking you, go do it. If you want to build a business that's going to generate revenue and have employees and take on investment, it has to be really defensible. And you have to clearly be somewhere in there, like, hey, the right person to bring that to market and make it real. So I think the discovery process of what is that thing, that was what was super helpful for me at business school. And I initially looked at the MBA program at University of Texas, and all veterans out there that are looking at entrepreneurship and what's next, as you get into your next year, there is a program at Texas that I did called the Masters in Science and Technology Commercialization. It is a 1 year. You can do it remote. I had the opportunity to do it here in person in Austin, which is amazing. And think of an MBA focused on startups and entrepreneurship. So the translation guide, so jump straight into everything you need to build a business. And it starts with your back of the napkin idea. What is it you think is the problem we're solving? Stress testing, is that a problem we're solving? How are you going to solve it? How are you going to solve it better than the competition and the way it's done now? Okay, cool. All right, how are you going to get this business after you've done everything you can to say, and this is the key step, don't fall in love with your idea. You're going to have 1,000 bad ideas. That's okay. It's all a part of the process. They're not all worth building. So really, really get the stress test. Like when you, in the military, we red cell things. You come up with your base plan, you throw it over, and then there's another team that just rips it apart and tells you how jacked up your plan is. Do the same thing find those confidence, find those mentors, find those resources, you internally challenge it, and do everything you can to like explain why this is a bad idea. In the process, if you do that to all your ideas and there's one that just won't like go away, it's still standing, the zombie idea that's like, man, there's something there. That one is probably worth building. But if you don't do the diligence up front and try to actively red sell your own idea, you fall in love with it, you may have the right idea. You need to be passionate about it. I'm going to separate like fall in love with an idea and like putting blinders on and not paying attention to all the red flags that are there versus you're passionate about something. Yeah. Take that next step and question that and do real diligence on it. And man, if it holds up at the end, it's powerful because now you've got something you're purposeful about, you love, you got a real passion for. It's passed the stress test of being not just a good idea, but a good business. And now you're full go into making it happen. So I learned a lot in the technology commercialization program, how to do it, because it was founded basically with the partnership of NASA. They wanted to take technology out of the lab at NASA and commercialize it. And so in the early 90s, they spun it up. And so that's what it was all about. And as a part of that program, you really had to stress test your idea. It had to hold scrutiny. And I think I found that incredibly valuable at business school because everybody talks about the great ideas and this. It's like nobody talks about what do you have to do to like really get into the diligence to maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't build it. Maybe it's a great idea, but you're not the right guy to build it. So I think business school for me was super helpful in figuring out what was next. And then now kind of with that tool set, I had the ability to then go stress test and figure out what was right and what wasn't right and what made sense for me. And that's how I ended up on Critical Materials Group is I had a framework, I had a tool set that I could apply to figuring out companies that should be built. And when this problem fell into my lap with that tool set from business school, it didn't take long for me to figure out, hey, we've got a real problem here. And hey, this is something I can give my life force to. And I think I can inspire other people to come along with me on this ride with me and my co-founder. So it wasn't as much I had a very clear idea of like what I was going to do next. I knew what I wanted to accomplish, which was have a positive impact. But the exact business didn't come until later. That actually, after, investing in the tools to better understand how to evaluate business opportunities and bring them to market, that led me into, kind of the discovery path to what I'm doing now.
That's a great analogy, and I love the idea of red selling your ideas. That just resonates with a fellow veteran, right? I've never heard anybody say it that way. I mean, but it makes perfect sense. That's what we do for all of our plans. You have those guys, and I've had one of my plans get just crushed back in the day, And I'm impressed for an infantry guy to go into the tech space. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, not bad for you to figure that all out. Now, you obviously had a co-founder. Maybe he's I don't want to say anything, but
Yeah, no, he's really sharp. A guy named Travis Swanson has just been for the last 30 years doing explosives engineering, production, et cetera. So he's certainly way smarter and more capable on the tech side than I am.
Well, Tom, let's dig into more about what you do at Critical Materials Group and what did that idea become? I mean, a lot of times maybe you had the kernel of the idea, but you do have to adjust it a little bit over time to sell it, to market it, to get buy-in to it. I mean, again, it sounds like you figured out, generally speaking, a gap in the market, a hole, an opportunity in the market. You red sell to a place you thought would be successful. Was it that simple of a straight line? I assume not. I mean, what would you share about the journey to get from when you kind of said, okay, this is the one, we're gonna go put all the chips in on this idea to get to where it is today? I mean, what did you have to go through from there to here to navigate that process?
Yeah, I think the initial it starts with, hey, there's a problem, and you kind of see it. And I didn't appreciate when I was in service that we have an industrial base across the board that needs expansion. We need additional capacity. Within the munitions industrial base, you're aware of the primes, and that is a self-inflicted wound that's well documented and talked about, where we consolidated. And we did that to kind of gain some efficiencies, but that's created some real choke points and vulnerabilities for us. So in service, I didn't realize that, hey, when we look at our munitions industrial base, you've got a lot of single points of production. That's it. If one of those goes down, some key program doesn't get satisfied. And so when I retired, I became aware of that. So loosely, I knew that, hey, there's only a certain number of folks that do X, Y, and Z. And then as I was looking for my next thing last spring, I became aware that, hey, we've got some single points of production problems specific to the energetic materials that our nation needs. And so for me, that was like, okay, cool. I want to dive deeper. So what was the next step is to start doing all open source like research and dive to the bottom of the internets and try to figure out, okay, hey, surely somebody's solving this problem. Like there's no way that nobody's not solving the problem. And then you get to the bottom of it, you're like, man, I can't find somebody solving this problem. And I do that for like 2 months. And this is like in the summer time frame before we kind of launched, before I hopped on with Travis to do this. But it became apparent, like, no, there's nobody coming. Nobody solved this. And so, hey, now I knew I had a real problem. And then, okay, what exactly is the problem? And so you start to just kind of military decision-making process, break it down in very small chunks, research it, establish your facts, have your assumptions. All sounds super familiar for the veterans out there. And then you start to line up, do your course of action. Well, how would I solve this problem? And which ultimately becomes your go-to-market plan and your business value prop. And so that happened over a course of about 3 months. And then I went into, hey, I will join you, Travis, as a co-founder of Critical Materials Group, as a CEO. We will launch this. We will position this company, and this is a decision in the defense space. We will position this company to be able to take on venture and other institutional capital, which required us to become a Delaware C Corp or another C Corp that makes it very easy for investors to come in and out. It's a well-understood framework. And then, what do you need to get into the government like space? What's your core team? Who are your first few folks? Well, Travis is the technical. I think I bring a suite of executive, and I do have a kind of a tech nerd side to me. I love technology. I love advanced manufacturing. I couldn't do it, but I have a capacity to understand it and evaluate risk with it and make sure that things are happening. But if you're going to do business in the government space, you have to have a very strong government team. So folks that can walk in both lanes, but that ultimately can get you tight. So we had to have a government, and then you need to have somebody that can deliver on the value. Like, hey, this is what we're going to produce. So operations and production. So it started with like, hey, we got a problem. Verified that is actually a really problem. Did everything I could to say, surely somebody else is solving it, but it's not being solved. And then, okay, now start to line up on the shot of like, what do we need to do to make this happen? If you looked at the first couple versions of our pitch deck to what it looks like now, they are light years apart. We go through it hundreds of times. I've talked to hundreds of investors, and every single time you get a little bit sharper, and you just got to weigh it in, and you're going to look like an idiot at times. That's okay. Take the feedback. Oh wow, I didn't think about that. That's a really obvious thing, Investor X. I should have done that. Thank you, and just put it in. And you're going to get told no a lot along your way. So that's where like you really got to be invested in this problem. Like if you haven't done your homework up front to figure out that this problem is worth solving and there's a real market opportunity here, your ability to push through all of the no's and the rejection and like the upward, like you're pushing a rock uphill, it's going to be really, really hard. And instead of sticking to your guns and saying, you know what, that's the end, how we get there, we're going to pivot into certain like different ways to get there, but that's where we're going. And if you don't have that kind of grounded approach, it's easy to get pushed off the X. And for us, I think we did that up front. We found out where we wanted to go. We wanted to be an energetics manufacturer in the United States to support us and our allies for critical materials needed for our munitions. And we had a general idea how we were going to do it and the team we were going to build to get there. And we continued to refine and hone like that value prop and that go to market. But we invested heavily up front. So anybody that's looking to get in defense space, I must say the dirty word, you're going to have to get a lobbying team. Like there's a lot of folks going to tell you don't need to do it. You need to get in there. You need congressional support because chances are that program you're bringing to market requires some additional funding that somebody doesn't have in their program line. So you got to make an investment congressionally, and you got to find out who really buys your product. A lot of times folks will go to an event and, hey man, Captain X, Sergeant X says, hey, I love your stuff. It's amazing. I want 1 million of them. And an entrepreneur will be like, oh, that's great. I got market fit. They want it. Oh, no, 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 no. Who buys it for that captain or sergeant? That's who you need to talk to. That's validation. They may pull you along, but if you don't have an understanding in the government space of how acquisition really works, you got to figure it out. You got to find out how the people that really set requirements, that fund those requirements, how to get them more money to fund your thing. So it is an interesting dynamic that's separate from the commercial world, where you really don't need to have some of that infrastructure in place to get to market for something that's kind of a straight B2C or B2B play, where you're going straight to your customer and you don't have to push through government federal acquisition regulation. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's been constant iteration. We're going to continue to iterate. But it's been a phenomenal process, and candidly, we've failed a lot, but we've had a lot of really good success early on too.
No, that's again some great insights. And in my head, I'm thinking it's maneuver warfare, right? Surfacing gaps. You're trying to find. You hit a wall here. You pivot a little bit, and you look for the surface and the opportunity to attack and keep moving. You don't know how you're going to get there, and it's never a straight line. I know that for sure. But be willing to keep the head down and grind, but also we want to pivot a little bit and realize that. As good as the idea is, you're not necessarily the smartest guy in the room, and that feedback that you're getting, to take that on board and to change and to be able to get to the end state you have in mind, and not lose sight of that. That's great insight. The lobbying piece too, I think, is probably some great insights, because it's part of the deal. I mean, it is. It's just maybe not the fun part, not the people you write about, but that's just it's all connected. You gotta have that in the space, obviously, to get from point A to point B at the end of the day. So yeah, great insights. You obviously made the pitch you've had. You said, hundreds. How do you get thick skin from? I'm sure you're still looking for investors, right? Fair to say, like, you're still looking for folks out there. Is it just you get used to being told no? A lot of folks on the show have said, yeah, it's 100 no's for every yes, but. How did you deal with that? Now it's probably a little easier because you have some success, but has it gotten easier over time?
Yeah, candidly, it's all like anybody that tells you, hey, rejection's easy, just probably isn't being fully honest.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it doesn't come like to your face. The rejection comes in a little bit different manner, where they smile at you, they say maybe something nice, and then you just don't hear from them again. Or, hey, they make an intonation, like it's just a polite way of saying, thank you, I'm not interested. And you can misread that signal. So I don't think you have a bunch of rejection where somebody's being unprofessional with you, or just kind of, those, out of 100%, I'd say maybe there's a 0.5% that just aren't very emotionally mature and just don't have great, but that's, basically, you select out of that. You're like, hey, I'm not really interested in doing business or having that type of an organization as an investor. But it opens you up to find a whole bunch of great ones. So I think, again, it goes back to how do you handle people not loving your idea as much as you do? You got to love your idea. You have to stress test your idea. You have to have confidence that you've done the work, that you're on the right path. You have to have an open mind and say, hey, I'm going to take that feedback. And that's the hardest thing to do. In the military, one of the questions we would ask is, go through different interview processes and boards, hey, what's your greatest weakness? And people aren't used to answering that question. And if you don't have that self-awareness and the humility to admit weakness, it makes it really, really tough to take any feedback or rejection. And so I was very fortunate to have somebody, as a process, intentionally expose me to that kind of mindset of hey, no, embrace your weakness, because there's going to be things you're just not going to be good at. And then, hey, that opens you up to get feedback, constructive feedback. And then ultimately to kind of take rejection. And rejection, I think, it doesn't come in some mean-spirited way. You just don't hear back from them. The things that you thought, oh man, that was a great conversation. It's maybe not so much. But I look at it as, it's making you better.
Yeah.
It's the best constructive. When you do get it, it's going to be really constructive. And man, somebody's telling you, if somebody's giving you real constructive feedback and they're doing it in a professional way as a part of a rejection, there's probably 10 other people that thought the same thing, just didn't bother to tell you. And so I think it is feedback's a gift, like they say at the national training centers and all that. And it is like, take it, embrace it, expect it, ask for it. Especially if you open yourself up and say, hey, what am I missing? Hey, what risk do you see? And you'll get a lot of perspective, but I think it is being open-minded and being willing to really, really dive deep on the diligence.
No, I mean, such great insights. I love how you write a book. I think there's a book in you, Kevin, or at least an article about, overlaying the kind of the military planning process with the civilian piece you've gone to, and just using different names, different terminology. But I think you've done a great job of talking about how the military planning process and things that you've utilized in your military career, you've brought over to the civilian side, different name. Maybe different people don't maybe call it the same thing, but a lot of it is the same as far as trying to get, the results you want, and to build a plan, and to stress test that plan, and to make sure the resources are going to be there, that it's going to be successful, to go on through the backups, and to think about what it looks like. I think there's something there, man. You gotta put that on paper. I like that. I like that. When you're back instructing in school, when you're going back to McCombs and teaching, you can go back and share that with them. As we kind of get ready to wrap up here, I mean, and knowing the audience we have of folks that are looking to get into this, this kind of space, this entrepreneurial space, a lot of the folks on the podcast, any lessons learned for folks like, wish you would have known now that you've learned, like, hey, if you're going to do what I did, don't do this, or make sure you do this, or resources that are out there that have been helpful to you. If you had to go back and tell Kevin, 3 years ago, like, okay, this focus on this because it's going to be a big problem for you. It'll help you get to where you want to go long term.
Yeah. Great question. Short answer is, a couple things. One, never stop believing in yourself. Like, at some point in time, you took massive risk and you didn't know how it's going to play out. I'm not talking physical risk. It could have been career risk, fear of failure, whatever. Any number of different difficult things that you did in your life, and specifically in the military. If you embrace the next phase of your life with that level of uncertainty, but that level of just like, get after it, let it rip, be vulnerable, I think you'll be extremely pleased with the outcome. While nobody ever told me that, I intuitively felt that. And I think as I talk to fellow veterans that are getting out, it's like, hey, you've got this. Candidly, you've been built for it. Like, you have been trained over the decades to do this. You've got all the tool set. It's you. And it's the framework of, are you looking to get a job, or are you looking to make a job? In none of them, there's a couple sayings out there, the right path is the one you choose. There's not a wrong path out there. If you want to commit your life to nonprofit work, that's amazing. Go do it. If you want to go back and be a GS civilian because you just love it and that's your end, cool. If you want to be a contractor in the building, doing stuff in support of them, great. If you want to go work for a big company, great. But be honest with yourself. What is it you really want to do? Because if you think you want to go be a founder and build something, go build. There is nothing you're going to do in another place that's going to give you the insights other than getting vulnerable, assuming risk, and going for it. And that leads into what allows you to do that with full vigor and force. And it starts with you, your health, the thing you've probably been ignoring for the last 2 decades as you run through your VA physicals and all that other kind of stuff. It's like, man, oh yeah, now I know why that hurt for 10 years. I could have fixed that if I'd have known I had this issue. But get your health right. It is foundational. And as a part of your health, it's your sleep. And all those things that you do that impact your sleep as you get older, and we realize we're human. Hey, sleep's such a fundamental thing. And for me, I had 2 issues that were getting in my way of sleep, and nobody told me. I wish they had. Hey, focus on your health, which is kind of duh. But for me, it was sleep. You take a look at the number of veterans struggling with sleep out there as they transition, and you got a huge mental load and stress, and people write it off to that. But there's other physiological reasons. For me, food sensitivities that I developed over my time in service that were creating inflammation, that were making it more difficult. And the other one that people talk about, but it's alcohol. If, I had the period of time, probably about 2 years on my retirement path, where I can control almost all the variables. I control what I ate, what I sleep, etc. And I still wasn't sleeping great. And I had a benefit of going through a program down in San Antonio called the PACER program. And it's a 3-week inpatient deal. And It was built for polytrauma patients. So polytrauma, for those that don't know, it's like, hey, you get into a really bad car wreck, you got stuff going with every single system in your body, and they have to put it back together. But your veterans that have been hitting it hard for 20 plus years have the same type of symptoms. They require the same type of clinical approach. And it was in that program, as they're looking at everything, and they're like, well, you still can't sleep. I was like, yeah, it's number one thing I want to solve. And they're like, well, do you drink alcohol? It's like, yeah, but just like one beer a night, at dinner, it's like, it's our new ritual, like, well, I got this time. And that was crushing my sleep. And so I stopped drinking about 7 months ago. And it's kind of funny because you go to a party and people are like, are you all right? You're on the wagon? I was like, no, man, I like to sleep. So I think it's being truthful to what you want in your next phase. You want to get a job, you want to make a job, or do something else. If you want to make a job, the only way to like really get good at it, because you don't have 40 years to figure it out. I'm 51. I push towards like being Social Security eligible. That sounds like, hey, that's a decade for me. And so what do I want to do in my remaining work life? I'm going to put it all in, and I'm going to let it go. And that, you got to get your health straight. You got to get your family straight. I'll tell you, like, what I underestimated as well, and what I tell fellow veterans is there's the process you're going through, and there's the process your spouse is going through. I've been married 25 years this fall. She's been with me the whole way, all 13 combat deployments and 25 years and kind of no notice things. She attached to that purpose and found like, real identity in that as well. And so the transition for my spouse, my wife, was actually harder than I thought it was going to be for her. And there are some great resources out there. And I would say pay attention to that. And it's not just about you. Everybody's going to talk about you and thank you for your service. It's, hey, thank you for your spouse as well. And oh, by the way, there's some great resources out there, and don't forget that. The next thing, and this is the thing that a lot of guys get tripped up on, I think that plays into their risk calculus. Do I go for it or not? It's finances. Get your finances straight. Because if you're a train wreck and you got a mountain of debt, guess what you don't have is a ton of time to figure it out and to really figure out what's next. And so when I made my decision in 2019 to retire in 2023, we got lean. Right. So we cut away. We went from a 4,000 square foot house to a 2,000 square foot house. We took like boatloads of stuff to the Goodwill, and the stuff that they wouldn't take, we took to the dump, and we got out of our life. And then we cut finances, like the things that we were spending our money on. And the purpose of that was so that as I retired, that we weren't forced for me to have to take a job that didn't move me just to bring something in to cover the bills. Not everybody can do that. I will tell you, like, the Dave Ramsey, like, I don't really listen to him, but like, we just got lean. We got on top of our finances, knew where it was going, cut off things that weren't essential. And then we said, hey, we're going to have basically a 10-month runway post-retirement for me to full explore and go for it, which really helped buy the space and time for me to find the first couple opportunities. The 3.5 years that I've been retired from the military, I've only taken a full-time paycheck 18 of those months, because I'm betting on the future. And when you bet on the future as an owner, you're betting on equity. And if you are in a position financially to bear that, and your family's in a good spot, and your health's in a good spot, and you're aligned on what you want to do next, and you've had those hard questions with yourself up front, go for it. So I think if I was trying to frame this out for myself, 4 or 5 years ago, is to like, hey, think about these things. That is, that is the advice I'd give myself.
That was great, man. I really appreciate those insights. And I mean, the bet on yourself piece I get, but my wife and I just finished up a 3-day couples retreat, and it's about the spiritual health. Cause I think, there's the spiritual piece for me. There's the physical piece you got to have. There's the mental and emotional piece. And we get so out of whack in the military because we're grinding, and you're like, oh, I'll catch up. Eventually I'll get there. But you're so right. If any of those pieces are out of whack, you're going to be out of whack, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual. And I think in a lot of ways that I really I loved hearing the focus you had about your family and the finance piece, and all those things are so important. I think often overlooked, to set the foundation to be successful and allow you to commit the way you need to commit as a founder, because you have to be all in, and you can't be all in if part of you's out of whack, right? You can't. And I think that's just some great insights. Well, hey, Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate the time today and the insights you shared. I know it'll be of value to our folks who watch the podcast. I wish you the best of luck. Can't wait to check back in with you in a few years and see how things are going, and hopefully our path will cross soon. So thanks again for the time today.
Yeah, thank you, Beau. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram @TheMilitaryVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMilVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@TheMilVet.org. Thank you so much and take care.